Hello and welcome to GreenFleet Talks. My name is Kate Armitage and I'm your host for our discussion today. I am delighted to be joined once again by Alison Argall, who is Business Development Director and Customer Retention Director at Tusker. Ali, great to see you.
Hi, Kate. Lovely to see you too again.
Yeah, good. We've got plenty to talk about, Ali. Leasing has been a key tool, I would say, in the rollout of electric vehicles in the UK. And despite uncertainty around the ICE ban and stretching ZEV mandate targets, salary sacrifice continues to be, I would say, the success story, the kind of poster boy of e-mobility. But I wanted to just touch base with you, Ali, on the myths that you are seeing doing the rounds in the media and the effect that that's having on people who are choosing a new car.
Yeah, interesting one, Kate. You would think we would start to probably see a lot more positivity as we have seen adoption into electric vehicles really grow. I mean, from our perspective and our experience, we're now sitting at a fleet of 50,000 vehicles, of which 76% of all those vehicles are EV, with normal order rate looking at around 80% of vehicles that are ordered currently with us are electric. So that's kind of 4 out of 5 people that are choosing to do that adoption. So we would kind of love to see the transition of a slightly more positive press at times around some of the headlines that come out. And it is interesting. They are, from literally sort of electric vehicles catch fire, if there is no data whatsoever to support that electric vehicles do, and actually predominantly much higher to happen in a petrol or a diesel vehicle is statistically what's being recorded. So there is those kind of super headlines, I would say, that to catch eyes, which we have to kind of really help people put in perspective. But the second sort of part of that probably are more of the learning curves and expectations of driving an electric vehicle, which is ultimately about the practicalities of it. So still see lots of headlines around not enough charge points, sort of the cost compared to, not being rationalized against a typical fossil fuel vehicle. And that's probably not helped at times that, we've all been in our vehicles, electric vehicles, or, by the way, a fossil fuel vehicle where we've stopped at a motorway services. We weren't expecting to pay the extra 20 pence per litre on our fossil fuel. And clearly in our new world with electric vehicles, we're not expecting to pay 3-4 times as much as we would if we were charging it at home.
Ali, I completely agree with you. The frustration, there's definitely a hidden agenda with all of this stuff in the media. Let's not get into conspiracy theories.
Absolutely.
But I think the big frustration for me is we see these headline grabbing news stories about fires on ships and fires in car parks, and hundreds, if not thousands, of vehicles being destroyed as a result. And they almost intuitively just say it was an electric vehicle. And they never retract that. They never print an apology when the report comes out that says actually it was an ICE car, it was a diesel or whatever, So it's really, really frustrating times, I think, in that sense.
It can be. And I think, we just continue to kind of counteract and kind of use a sense of reason, I think, around actually let's talk about, especially let's talk about the UK. rather than sometimes that sort of whole worldwide aspect. But also around that practicality side. So managing expectations, not everybody is going to be ready to jump into new technology. There are a lot of fossil fuel lovers out there that, will say things like, "Oh, we love the sound of the engine and I'll miss that." That I can only tell you from our own experience around seeing that renewal cycle, so from people that were relatively early adopters, 2018, 19, of course, now recycling and choosing to come back into a scheme and actually, even given choice, 96% are choosing to come back into an electric vehicle. Now, renewal rates around 73% of people renewing from one vehicle into another. And they have choice, they don't feel they have to. But I think once they've had that experience, they love the driving electric. They've more than likely put the infrastructure in or got into the habit of that P&P, that whole planning and preparation around a day-to-day sort of life as such. And of course, the whole point, the infrastructure has increased so dramatically. I mean, we participated in the EV rally this year, which was sponsored by Lex, and we didn't do it last year. And the difference, so many of the people that had done it year on year said around infrastructure was really quite significant, quite amazing.
Yeah.
That's year on year, something like 21,500 charge
It's
points.
been huge growth. Yeah, huge growth, Ali. And I think most notably on the rapid charge and the high powered charging network, which is where I think a lot of people rely on it, because it is for those slightly longer journeys, those exceptional journeys where you suddenly think, oh gosh, I need to use a public charger. I mean, you've touched on the cost disparity between home charging and public charging, and that is a reality.
It is at the moment.
But what other barriers are drivers facing when they make that switch to an electric vehicle?
I think I think the barriers are fear and inconvenience. Again, maybe some disparity across headlines again that say they don't save you money. Genuinely, if you are prepared to plan, and 2/3 of the UK property market enables charge point installation, as in they have their own, they have a drive or off-road parking. It is just taking these into consideration. But I can tell you so many case studies about people that have no home charging. Yes, they might have work charging, but they still run an EV and do so very successfully. But it is that planning about understanding what the tariffs are, what the best time, of course, to do that charging. And that way you are still, despite not having the huge benefit of that super overnight rate necessarily on your home drive, you are still probably, or not even probably, you are, if you're savvy with it, can still significantly reduce your motoring costs.
Yeah. I completely agree, Ali. And I think, the other thing, which I don't hear talked about very often is, we focus on how many public chargers there are in total, tens of thousands of them. But the reality, even if you haven't got a home charger, the reality is you'll have your favorites. You'll have the same journeys that you do regularly, and day in, day out, you will almost definitely be using the same 2 or 3 locations. Workplace, probably one of them if you haven't got a home charger. So it's not like you wake up every day and you're plunged into this great unknown and you don't know where to go. It's not, if you drive an ICE, you don't think, where am I going to get my petrol from today?
You do not. You assume it's around the corner.
Yeah. Well, and the charge points, of course, are around the corner. And when you know when you know, I guess is the point with this. Yeah.
Without a doubt. And I think also utilising the amazing technology is
Yeah.
actually available now, which is actually being able to make that route planning
Yeah.
so much more convenient and effective.
Yeah, and this is apps, not just to help you actually access the charging, but just to help you identify where they are, and you can filter where so many different ways and put your route in. You're absolutely right. It's actually quite refreshing way to plan your journey. What about the employers? What can they do to support their staff who are transitioning to EVs?
Well, I always love to think they can lead by example in the lovely new electric
Yeah,
vehicle. But joking aside, it is very much about helping with that handhold, which is having access to plenty of information and tools that are going to help give their employees that comfort, see it for themselves, case study material that is giving making it humanized. So, I mean, for example, we have a EV hub on our online employee portal, which the idea is to just give them access to do a cost saving. Or if I were driving, a fossil fuel today, and I was to switch that to an EV, and that EV is, MG4, for example, and actually themselves what those costs could look like. And that also does help people come to their own personal comfort zone, I think,
yeah,
around how inconvenienced are they prepared to be for that pound sign. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's putting it into practice. The other thing that we found works really well is an organisation, the employer, are happy for us to do case studies on their employees that have taken an electric vehicle, what that vehicle is, what the circumstances are, what their experience is. And actually, that is so powerful because,
yeah.
people within an organization can relate so much more. I think when they, might not even know that individual, but they know they're part of that organization.
Yeah, and that power of advocacy cannot be underestimated. And
A hundred.
I mean, at the beginning of our chat, Ali, you were saying I think that 73 or 76% of all your vehicles are now electric. So I
Yeah,
mean, it's contagious, isn't it? If
it
you're
is.
going into a car park and you see more and more and more electric vehicles, or actually, what I actually see these days is the green number plate, because they
Yeah,
don't, because I wouldn't, to be honest with you, I wouldn't know whether it was electric or not if it didn't have a number plate. But you kind of think, well, everyone's doing it. This is normal.
yeah,
I need to get on board with this. Yeah.
yeah, very
Great.
much so.
Yeah, and I guess employers as well, that advocacy, but also, we come back to this myth busting and being a reliable source of information, and really trying to help tackle some of the misinformation that's out there.
It is, and it is, those real stories, just people, employees are, going about their day to day. And I mean, it does vary massively. We have some employees that literally quite happily these days take in arrangements for just, 5,000 miles per annum. They really just don't, their life has changed and it is that short. But then also those case studies where actually you have got people that, use it for work and they are, doing 20 plus thousand miles, very, very happily.
Yeah, and comfortably, and in a lovely car.
Yeah.
So Ali, despite me shouting to the world about how great salary sacrifice is, because I am a massive fan, there are still employers out there who themselves haven't begun electrifying their vehicles. So not just salary sacrifice, but that whole decarbonisation
Absolutely.
program.
That whole
And
traditional.
exactly, and a whole topic has been the ZEV mandate, the government ZEV mandate, and of course the ICE ban being moved back to 2035. And now we believe that Labour will be reintroducing that to 2030. What advice have you got for those fleets?
Which is, you know, trying to find for them what their barriers are. Now, typically, once upon a time that we've talked about this before, sort of our three reasons why people would want to put a scheme in. The third one was typically around that whole sustainability, carbon reduction. Now, that quite often sits as high as number one. Around people, organizations understanding they have to do this and they need a tangible mechanism to help evidence that they are reducing their carbon footprint. So it's not that it's not a corporate on the corporate agenda. I think there's a perception that it's just going to be so complicated to do those sorts of reviews, and that also that they may have a lot of pushback from employees, which of course they don't want, especially where we're talking essential user company car choice lists, for example. So there is back to that education. Let us, and also the wider industry, get you comfortable that it's not the big, onerous, emotive task that you think it is, because the benefits of being early adopters, we've seen it time and time again, where we're seeing the transition, sort of, even where we still have a lot of schemes where they're not it's not a EV scheme in its entirety. The inclusiveness of including lower CO2 vehicles or plug-in hybrids to give that choice. But from our 80%, you can still see that it's only 20%. It's only 1 in 5 that chooses not to go to an electric vehicle. So I think it is still that theme of education and getting people comfortable to see those benefits. But the sooner you start that journey, and enable some level of choice, I think is really important. The sooner you're on, the sooner it has the opportunity to have that snowball effect that, of course, you want, which is someone saying, oh, that's a nice car, kind of, how is it? What does it do? How does it feel? What are you getting on miles per gallon? How are you finding the charging? And, again, starting that kind of word of mouth encouragement.
And it's great perception as well for your business, to have your employees, even though it's their own personal car, they're driving around in an electric car. It kind of brings your credentials up. It's not as admin heavy as you think, and there are financial benefits for the employer around the national insurance savings.
Absolutely. And I mean, even for
fund their workplace infrastructure.
Yeah. So even where you're talking essential user schemes, somebody, your job use drivers, there is still significant cost savings for an employer. It's not, clearly within salary sacrifice, those are just part of the wonderful mechanism and substantial, of which actually I think, while we're seeing that confidence and experience of organisations that have been running schemes for a longer period of time, actually now really, choosing to share those savings to further reduce and sort of reduce the gross reductions, make the scheme more inclusive, better value for an employee, really compelling.
Yeah. Great. Well, Ali, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and great to be reminded about all the fabulous benefits that Tusker can offer for salary sacrifice and beyond. Thank you very much for your insight today.
Thank you, Kate. Pleasure as always.
Yeah. And thank you, of course, to Tusker for joining GreenFleet Talks. That is about all we've got time for. Thank you for watching. Please tune in to GF365 again soon.